The great hall of the human station shimmered with silver walls and bright lights. Flags of both humans and Zorath hung side by side, though the air was heavy with caution. For years, the two civilizations had been locked in battles across the stars. Now, for the first time, their leaders had gathered to speak of peace. Every eye turned when the tall doors opened and the Queen of the Zorath stepped inside. Queen Lyra was known across the galaxy for her calm but commanding presence. She moved with the grace of one who had faced countless storms and had never bent. Her golden robes flowed like liquid metal as she walked, and the soldiers at her side kept their heads lowered, showing her unmatched power. The humans, lined along the walls, stood stiff and silent, their uniforms neat and their faces alert. Among them stood Ryan, a young guard assigned to the Queen's arrival. He was trained to keep his eyes forward and his mind steady, but when she entered, he felt her gaze touch him like a sudden spark. He kept still, though his heart quickened. To him, she was only a figure of importance, a leader of the other side. To her, he was something far stranger. The moment Lyra's eyes met Ryan's, her steps slowed. Her inner thoughts, always so sharp, stumbled for the first time in years. His face, those eyes, the shape of his jaw, even the way he stood, it all mirrored someone she had once known too well. Long ago, before war had hardened her heart, she had been bound to a man whose betrayal had torn her life apart. She had not spoken his name in decades, and yet here before her stood a human soldier who looked like him. She did not allow her shock to show. A queen could not falter in front of rivals. But inside her, questions rushed forward. Was it coincidence? Was the universe mocking her with this image? Or was there something hidden behind this human's existence? Ryan felt the weight of her stare, though he did not understand it. He kept his hand firm on the staff of his weapon and fixed his eyes on the empty space before him. Still, he could not help but sense that the Queen was studying him more than anyone else in the hall. The Human Council leader, a man named Darren, stepped forward to greet her. "We welcome you, Queen Lyra, to this place of meeting. May our words today open a door to peace." The Queen shifted her eyes from Ryan to Darren, answering in her steady voice. "Peace is not given freely. It is earned. We shall see if your people are ready." The hall filled with whispers, but Ryan heard none of them. He kept wondering why she had looked at him in that strange, lingering way. Had he done something wrong? Or did she see weakness in him? His training told him to dismiss it, but his mind refused to quiet. As the leaders moved toward the long table at the center of the hall, Lyra's thoughts returned again to the guard. She remembered her former husband, how he had smiled, how he had stood beside her before everything changed. The resemblance was so strong that her chest tightened. Yet this human, young and unknowing, could not possibly be him. It was impossible. And still, the image would not leave her. The talks began, filled with careful words and hidden tension. Human Council members spoke of trade and borders, while Zorath envoys countered with demands and warnings. But again and again, Lyra's gaze wandered back to Ryan. Each time, she forced her eyes away, afraid that her people might notice her distraction. She reminded herself that she was a queen, not a dreamer haunted by the past. Ryan noticed her glances, though he kept silent. He felt as if he stood under a heavy light, though no one else seemed aware of it. His fellow guards shifted now and then, but none felt the strange pull he did. In his heart, a question grew: why did this alien queen look at him with such intensity, as if she already knew him? As hours passed, the talks reached pauses and disputes. Voices grew sharp, then calmed again. The hall echoed with the clash of words instead of weapons, yet the atmosphere felt no less tense. Through it all, the silent thread between the Queen and the guard remained. When the session finally closed for the day, the council rose from their seats. The Queen stood as well, tall and unshaken, her robe catching the light. She gave a final glance toward the guards, and once more her eyes lingered on Ryan. He lowered his gaze quickly, but not before he saw a flicker of something in her face. Not anger, not command, but something deeper: confusion, perhaps even pain. She turned and left the hall, her steps strong, yet her mind clouded. For the first time in many years, Queen Lyra carried not only the burden of her empire but also the echo of a face she thought she would never see again. Ryan, left standing at his post, felt a chill he could not name. He had guarded halls before, watched leaders before, but never had he felt so deeply seen. The hall grew quiet as the people left, but within both the queen and the guard, a question burned. Neither of them spoke it aloud, yet both felt the same sense that their paths were now tied, though neither could explain why. That night, the human station glowed with quiet lights. The great hall was empty, but the memory of the long meeting still lingered in the minds of those who had attended. For Queen Lyra, however, it was not the sharp words of the human council that followed her into her private chamber. It was the face of a single guard. She sat alone, the stars shining through the wide glass wall behind her. From her seat, she could see the vast spread of space, endless and dark, dotted with white fire. Yet even the beauty of the stars could not calm her thoughts. She pressed a hand against the edge of her chair, her jaw tight. The image of Ryan's face came back again and again, stirring memories she had long buried. In her younger years, before she became queen, Lyra had once trusted a man named Torin. He had been strong and charming, his voice filled with promises, his smile enough to make her believe in a future of unity. But that future had never come. Instead, Torin had chosen ambition over loyalty. His betrayal had cut her deeper than any blade, leaving scars she carried even now. Since that day, she had never allowed anyone to come close to her heart again. Yet now, on a human station far from her home world, she had seen his face once more reborn in the features of a human soldier. It made no sense, and still it shook her. Her thoughts were interrupted by one of her advisors, a tall Zorith warrior named Velar. He bowed lightly before speaking. "My queen, the talks will continue tomorrow. The humans seem eager to find common ground, though they are stubborn." Lyra nodded slowly, forcing her mind back to the present. "They seek peace because they are tired of war. But tiredness does not make trust. We must be careful." Velar's sharp eyes studied her for a moment. He seemed to notice her distraction. "Did something trouble you during the meeting?" he asked. The queen's expression hardened, her voice calm but cold. "No. Nothing that need concern you." Velar bowed again, though a shadow of doubt passed over his face. He had served her for many years and could tell when her mind carried a hidden weight. Still, he dared not question her further. When he left, silence filled the chamber once more. Lyra turned her eyes back to the stars, her heart restless. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Ryan sat with a few fellow guards in the resting quarters. They spoke quietly about the day, trading small jokes to ease the tension. Yet Ryan said little. His thoughts, like the queen's, had wandered far from the council hall. He kept replaying the moment when her eyes had locked onto him. He had guarded leaders before, but never had one looked at him with such intensity. It was not simple command or cold judgment. It was something else, something he could not name. He felt as if she had looked straight into his soul, searching for something hidden. "Ryan, you are too quiet tonight," one of the guards said with a small laugh. "Did the queen's stare scare you?" Ryan gave a faint smile, shaking his head. "No. Just tired." But inside, he knew it was not only tiredness. Something about her gaze had left a mark on him, though he did not understand why. As the night deepened, both the queen and the guard lay awake in different quarters, their minds restless with thoughts of each other. The next morning, the talks resumed. The great hall filled again with voices, papers, and the sound of boots on metal floors. The council members gathered, ready to argue once more. Lyra entered with her usual grace, her face calm as stone. Yet her eyes, against her will, searched for Ryan. She found him at his post along the wall, standing tall and still, his hand on his weapon. His uniform was plain, yet his presence pulled her attention like a magnet. She forced herself to look away and sit upon her chair. The council leader Darren began to speak, laying out terms and demands. The Zorath envoys responded with equal sharpness. Arguments rose and fell like waves. Yet, for Lyra, every word felt distant. Her thoughts kept drifting. Why did this human bear the same face as Tauren? Was it a trick of chance, or did fate weave such patterns for a reason? She told herself it was nothing more than coincidence, but her heart did not believe. At one moment during the talks, Ryan shifted slightly, scanning the hall with careful eyes. His calm movements, the firmness of his stance, all reminded her of how Tauren once stood in her presence, full of confidence. The memory pressed against her chest, heavy and unwanted. She clenched her hands beneath the table, steadying herself. When the session ended for the day, Lyra rose and walked out swiftly, her robe trailing behind her. But before she left the hall, she allowed herself one final glance at Ryan. He did not notice this time, his eyes focused on duty, but she felt the old storm inside her rise again. As she returned to her chamber, Velar followed, speaking of reports and strategies. She nodded at his words but heard little of them. All she could think of was the past she had fought to bury, now standing before her in human form. That night, alone once more, she whispered to herself in a voice no one else could hear. Why him? Why now? Her heart carried no answer, only the echo of memories she thought were gone forever. The human station buzzed with activity the next morning. Workers moved quickly through the long metal corridors, carrying crates, adjusting panels, and preparing for another day of talks. Yet beneath the daily rhythm, tension spread like unseen smoke. Both humans and Zorath knew the peace discussions were fragile. A single wrong word could shatter everything. Inside the great hall, the long table was once again set with polished screens and glowing records. Council members prepared their arguments, while Zorath envoys sharpened their points of demand. The sound of boots echoed as guards took their places along the walls, silent but watchful. Among them stood Ryan. His expression was calm, but his mind carried questions from the last 2 days. When Queen Lyra entered, the room hushed. Her golden robe swept across the floor, her crown gleamed with silver light, and her eyes carried the weight of centuries. Yet hidden beneath her steady face, she felt the same tug as before. Her gaze drifted toward Ryan. She told herself not to look, not to let weakness rule her, but her eyes betrayed her once more. Ryan felt it. That same silent pull. His training told him to remain stone still, yet his chest grew tight. Why did she watch him so often? What did she see in him? He did not dare meet her eyes, but he felt her presence pressing upon him like a heavy hand. The council leader Darren began the talks with careful words. Queen Lyra, we hope today will bring progress. Our people need peace, and the future demands it. Lyra folded her hands on the table. Peace cannot be built on need alone. It must stand on strength. Without strength, your promises mean nothing. Her voice was sharp, yet her mind drifted. She tested the humans with her words, but she was also testing herself. She felt as though Ryan's very existence was a test from the stars, an echo of her past standing before her. As the talks stretched on, disputes rose. A Zorath envoy slammed his hand on the table, his voice like a blade. The humans ask for more than they give. Why should we bow to them? Darren responded with equal fire. We ask for fairness, not weakness. If you wish to continue war, then no, we will not kneel. Voices clashed. Tension swelled. Yet through it all, Queen Lyra's mind circled back to the silent human guard. She studied how he stood, how his eyes moved across the hall with calm focus. Unlike Tauren, her ex-husband, Ryan showed no hunger for power in his face. His strength was quiet, not loud. His loyalty seemed firm, not shifting like sand. Still, she could not escape the likeness. The same shape of his features, the same way he held his shoulders, every detail burned like a memory brought to life. She wondered if her advisors had noticed her distraction. If they had, none dared speak of it. When the talks paused for a break, Lyra rose and stepped aside to the edge of the hall. She needed air, though the hall was sealed with filtered breath. Ryan, following orders, moved slightly closer, standing guard near where she rested. The Queen's eyes turned to him suddenly, sharp and searching. "What is your name, human guard?" Ryan blinked, surprised that she spoke to him directly. He straightened and answered, "Ryan, my queen." Her lips pressed into a thin line at the sound of his voice. Even his tone carried an echo of Tauren, though softer, less cunning. "And where do you come from, Ryan?" she asked. "My village is on the outer rim of Earth's colonies," he said simply. "I grew up among fields, not ships. I joined service to protect my people." Lyra studied him for a long moment. His answers were plain, his manner steady. There was no trick, no hidden game. He was a guard, nothing more. Yet the resemblance tore at her thoughts. She turned her face away before others could see the faint tremor in her eyes. Ryan, though calm outside, felt his heart race. Why did the Queen care to ask about him? Why would the most powerful leader among the Zorith waste words on a guard? He did not know the storm his likeness had stirred in her. The break ended, and the talks resumed. Once more, voices filled the hall, clashing and twisting. Yet for both the Queen and the guard, the air between them felt heavy with silent questions. When the day's session finally closed, tension still hung thick. Progress was slow, and both sides remained wary. Lyra rose from her chair, her robe sweeping behind her as she prepared to leave. But before stepping out, she cast one last glance toward Ryan. This time, her eyes did not hold command or judgment. For a brief instant, they held something else: conflict, sorrow, and the weight of memory. Ryan caught the look, and though it lasted only a breath, it stayed with him. As he stood silently at his post, he wondered if peace was the only thing being tested in these halls. Perhaps fate itself had placed him in the path of the Queen for reasons neither of them yet understood. The great hall grew quiet after another long day of talks. Voices that had once clashed like blades now faded into the steel corridors of the station. Humans returned to their quarters, Zorith envoys followed their queen, and guards resumed their watch. But Queen Lyra's mind was not at rest. She had hidden her thoughts well during the discussions, yet the image of the human guard, Ryan, would not leave her. Each glance at him struck her like a memory reborn. She had spent years burying the pain of Tauren, her former husband, and his betrayal. Now, here stood a human who carried the same face, yet spoke with honest strength. She needed to know if this likeness was only surface or if fate had tied something deeper. That evening, in her private chamber, she summoned Velar, her loyal advisor. He entered with a bow. "My queen," he said, "tomorrow's session will focus on the sharing of trade routes. The humans seek open passage, but we must—" She lifted her hand, stopping him. "Velar, assign the human guard Ryan to my personal watch tonight. I want him outside my chamber doors." Velar's eyes narrowed with surprise. "A human, my queen? You trust him for your safety?" "I do not speak of trust," she answered firmly. "I speak of command. See it done." Velar bowed again, though unease clouded his face. "As you wish." When he left, Lyra stood by the glass wall, staring at the stars. Her reflection looked back at her calm, regal, yet restless beneath the surface. She wondered if she was acting out of wisdom or weakness. Still, she could not resist. She had to test this Ryan for herself. Hours later, the corridor outside her chamber grew silent. Ryan stood guard, his weapon at his side, his stance steady. Though he had been told nothing of why he was chosen, he followed the order without question. He had guarded many doors, but this one felt heavier. The Queen of the Zorith rested inside, and he alone was the shield before her. Then, her voice came through the door. "Ryan! Enter!" His heart thudded once in his chest. Guards were not called inside without cause. He hesitated only a breath before stepping into the chamber. The room was wide, with walls of smooth metal and a great window showing the endless stars. The queen stood near it, her robe flowing softly in the pale light. She turned, her eyes sharp, fixed on him as if she wished to cut through his very being. "Do you know why I called you here?" she asked. "No, my queen," Ryan answered, standing tall. "I wish to know who you are," she said. "Not the name, not the uniform. I want to know the man." Ryan blinked, unsure how to answer such a question. "I am a guard. I serve my people and follow orders. That is who I am." Her eyes narrowed. "That is the surface. But what lies beneath? Do you fight only because you are told? Or do you fight because of belief?" He paused, thinking carefully. His voice was steady when he spoke again. "I fight to protect my home. My family lives far from war, in a small village. If I can keep the war from reaching them, then I have done my duty. That is my belief." Lyra's gaze lingered on him, her heart unsettled. His words were plain, free of pride or deception. Torin, her former husband, had once spoken of power, of destiny, of ruling through strength. But Ryan spoke only of duty and family. The contrast pierced her. She stepped closer, studying him with fierce intensity. "You do not fear standing before me, human." Ryan met her eyes, though with respect. "I fear failing in my duty. But I do not fear speaking truth." For the first time in many years, the queen felt her mask slip. She turned slightly away, hiding the flicker of emotion in her eyes. Her voice lowered. "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who left scars I carry still." Ryan remained silent, unsure if she wanted an answer. After a moment, she faced him again, her expression calm once more. "You may return to your post. Guard this chamber well." He bowed his head. "I will, my queen." When he left, silence filled the room again. Lyra stood by the window, her heart unsettled. She had tested him, and he had answered with honesty. He was not Torin, and yet the resemblance still shook her. She wondered if the universe had placed him before her as a warning or as a chance. Outside the chamber, Ryan resumed his watch. His face showed calm, but his mind stirred with questions. Why had the queen spoken to him in such a way? Why did she look at him with eyes that seemed filled not only with command but also with hidden sorrow? The corridor remained silent, but within both the queen and the guard, storms continued to grow. The test had not ended, it had only begun. The human station moved as if the talks between humans and Zorith were the only matters of importance. Yet beneath the calm surface, shadows stirred. Not all Zorith wished for peace, and not all humans trusted their new guests. Rumors whispered through the corridors like hidden whines. Ryan had been standing his post for several days now, often near the Queen's chambers or along the walls of the council hall. Each day brought more words of trade, orders, and demands, but no clear end. He kept silent, his eyes always sharp, yet his ears caught what others did not notice. Small fragments of conversation. Strange movements among the visitors. The kind of details only a quiet guard might see. One night, while making his rounds through a dim corridor near the Zorith quarters, Ryan overheard low voices. He slowed his steps, careful not to draw notice. The words were sharp, whispered in the Zorith tongue, but through training and experience, he understood enough to piece together meaning. "The Queen grows soft," one voice said. "She forgets the strength of our people," another replied. "Peace with humans is weakness. We must act. And when we strike, the humans will blame her. She will fall, and a new ruler will rise." Ryan felt the blood in his veins turn cold. He leaned back into the shadows as two Zorith soldiers passed by, their faces hidden beneath hoods. They carried nothing in their hands, but their eyes carried fire. He did not follow, for fear of exposure, but he memorized their words. When his shift ended, he returned to his quarters, his thoughts heavy. The queen was in danger. Yet how could he, a simple guard, warn her? Would she even believe him? The next morning, the talks began again. The great hall filled with voices, each side pushing for more. Ryan stood at his usual post, his face calm, though his mind churned. His eyes searched the Zorith delegation, trying to see if he could recognize the ones from the night before. Queen Lyra sat tall at the council table, her hands folded, her voice steady as she countered each demand. Yet even as she spoke, her eyes strayed once toward Ryan. The memory of their private conversation still lingered in her heart, though she kept her mask of control. At a pause in the talks, Ryan made his choice. He stepped forward, bowing slightly before addressing her. His voice was firm but respectful. "My queen, may I speak privately for a moment?" The hall went still. No guard had the right to interrupt, yet the queen raised her hand, silencing the murmurs. "Very well," she said. "We shall pause." She led him into a smaller chamber beside the hall, away from the ears of council and envoys. Once the door sealed behind them, her eyes fixed on him, sharp and unyielding. "You risk much by stepping forward, Ryan. Speak quickly." He bowed again. "Last night, I heard voices among your own soldiers. They spoke of betrayal. They plan to strike against this station. They said when the humans fall, the blame will rest on you. They mean to destroy the talks and remove you from power." Lyra's eyes narrowed. Her heart clenched, not in fear, but in recognition. She had long suspected that factions within her empire resisted her pursuit of peace. Yet to hear it confirmed from a human guard stirred both anger and sorrow. "You are certain?" she asked. "Yes, my queen," Ryan replied. "I swear it on my life." For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Lyra studied his face, searching for deceit, but found none. His honesty was plain, his words steady. She turned away, her robe sweeping across the floor. "This is the test then," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Not only for me, but for all who seek peace." When she faced him again, her voice carried command. "Say nothing of this to others, Ryan. The rebels will watch for loose tongues. I will act, but I must know whom I can trust." Ryan nodded. "You can trust me." Her eyes lingered on him, searching once more for weakness, yet his calm gaze did not waver. For the first time, she allowed a hint of her guard to fall. "I believe you," she said softly. That evening, Lyra called her closest advisors together, but she revealed little. She spoke of caution, of tightening security, of preparing for possible unrest. Velar, loyal yet suspicious, pressed her for answers, but she gave none. She could not risk revealing Ryan's discovery until she was sure who among her own people was true and who was false. Meanwhile, Ryan returned to his post with renewed purpose. The danger was real, and the burden now rested on his shoulders as well. He stood watch not only with his weapon, but with the weight of knowing what could come. In the shadows of the station, the rebels sharpened their plans. The day of the strike drew near, hidden from most eyes. But not from Ryan's. He had seen the storm before it broke, and he knew the Queen's fate might depend on him. The air inside the station grew heavy as days passed. The council meetings carried on, yet the whispers of betrayal lay hidden beneath the surface. Queen Lyra moved through each session with the same cold strength, but her heart knew the storm was close. Ryan stood at his post each day, silent and steady, yet his eyes searched every corner, waiting for the sign of danger. It came sooner than either of them wished. On the fourth day after Ryan had overheard the plot, the talks were in full motion. The great hall was filled with sharp voices as humans and Zorith argued over border rights. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered. The ground shuddered with a violent tremor. A deep alarm rang through the station, its sharp cry echoing off the steel walls. Gasps filled the chamber. Guards rushed to shields. Queen Lyra rose to her feet, her golden robe flashing in the failing light. She turned her head sharply as a blast shook the doors. Smoke poured into the hall. From within the haze came armed Zorith rebels, their eyes burning with defiance. For the strength of Zorith, they cried. Down with the weak queen! The hall erupted into chaos. Humans scrambled for cover, council leaders ducked behind tables, and loyal Zorith soldiers drew their blades to defend their ruler. The clash of steel and fire filled the air. Ryan did not hesitate. He leapt forward, his weapon in hand, placing himself between the queen and the rebels. Blades met in sparks as he blocked the strike of the first attacker. His arms shook with the force, but his feet held firm. The rebels' eyes widened at the sight of a human guard defending the Zorith queen with such strength. Lyra watched with sharp eyes. Memories of Tauren rose in her mind, the man who had once promised to fight beside her but had betrayed her instead. Yet here stood Ryan, the human who bore his face, striking back against her enemies without fear. For a moment, her heart faltered. Was fate showing her the difference between shadow and truth? The rebels pressed forward, their voices loud with fury. Loyal Zorith soldiers rushed to meet them, clashing in violent strikes. Humans joined as well, fighting to protect their station. For the first time, both species fought side by side, their blades united against a shared threat. But the rebels were strong. They had planned well, striking at the heart of the talks. Their weapons blazed, and each strike shook the chamber. Lyra herself drew a blade from her robe, her eyes shining with cold fire. She moved like flowing steel, striking down those who dared to come near her. Yet even a queen could not stand against the storm forever. 3 rebels broke past the guards, rushing toward her. Before they could reach her, Ryan threw himself into their path. His weapon clashed against theirs, sparks flying in all directions. Pain burned across his arm where a blade cut deep, but he did not fall. He pushed forward, driving them back with strength that seemed far greater than his own. "Stand back, my queen," he cried, his voice steady even as blood ran down his sleeve. For a heartbeat, Lyra felt the same fire she had once felt long ago when she had believed in loyalty. But this time, it was not an illusion. This human was no betrayer. His courage was real, carved into every strike of his blade. The battle raged on. Smoke filled the chamber. The sound of steel and cries of defiance echoed through the hall. Ryan fought with all he had, each strike fueled not only by duty but by something deeper, a will to prove that peace was worth more than destruction. At last, loyal Zorith forces began to push the rebels back. One by one, the traitors fell, their cries fading into silence. Those who remained fled, chased down the corridors by guards who would not allow them to rise again. The great hall lay in ruins. Tables shattered, banners torn, smoke curling up toward the broken lights above. Yet the queen still stood, her blade lowered but her spirit unbroken. Ryan dropped to one knee, his breath heavy, his arm bleeding. "The hall is safe, my queen," he said, his voice rough. Lyra stepped toward him, her robe brushing against the scorched floor. She looked down at the human who had stood between her and death, the one who bore the face of her past but the soul of something new. For the first time in many years, her heart softened. "You fought with courage greater than many I have known," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held a quiet fire. "You are not the shadow of the man I once knew. You are your own." Ryan looked up, meeting her gaze. He said nothing, but the truth of her words filled him with strength. Around them, silence settled. The battle was over, but its meaning was clear. Humans and Zorith had fought side by side, and the courage of a single guard had saved a queen. Yet both Lyra and Ryan knew this was not the end. The rebels had been struck down, but their fire was not fully gone. A choice now lay before the Queen, whether to stand firm in her path toward peace or to let fear of betrayal turn her away once more. For the first time in years, she felt that choice did not rest on her shoulders alone. The great hall still carried the marks of battle. Smoke clung to the high ceiling, and the scent of burned metal hung heavy in the air. Broken banners lay scattered across the floor, reminders of the clash that had nearly torn the council apart. Yet in the silence that followed, a strange calm settled over the chamber. Queen Lyra stood at the center, her robe torn, her crown tilted slightly from the struggle. Around her, loyal guards checked the wounded, helping both human and Zorith alike. For the first time, there was no separation between the two groups. They shared water, bandages, and strength, as if the battle had erased the lines that once divided them. Ryan leaned against a pillar, his arm wrapped in a rough bandage. The wound throbbed, but his spirit was steady. His eyes scanned the hall, watching as humans and Zorith worked together. It was a sight he had never thought possible when he first took his post. Lyra approached him quietly. For a moment, she did not speak. She simply stood, studying his face, the face that carried the shape of her lost past. Yet when she looked into his eyes, she no longer saw the ghost of Torin. She saw Ryan, the man who had chosen loyalty when betrayal would have been easier. "You stood when others fell," she said at last. Her voice was calm, but beneath it lay a deep weight. "Because of you, I still draw breath. Because of you, this council still stands." Ryan lowered his head. "I only did what I swore, my queen. My duty was to guard you, no matter the cost." Her eyes softened. "It was more than duty. You carried the burden of my past on your shoulders, yet you fought as yourself, not as his shadow. For that, I am in your debt." The hall slowly filled again with council members, some limping, others leaning on allies for support. Their faces carried both fear and respect. The attack had shaken them, but it had also shown them something undeniable. Humans and Zorith had stood side by side, united against a common enemy. One elder, his voice weary yet strong, spoke up. "Perhaps this is the proof we needed. Peace is not words written on stone, but the act of standing together when the storm strikes." Another counselor, a human with grey hair and sharp eyes, nodded. "If we turn away now, we throw away what has been shown to us. We fought together, and we survived together." Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. Slowly, the fear that had once gripped the council began to shift into resolve. Lyra raised her hand, calling for silence. Her tall figure stood against the smoke and ruin, but her voice carried with clear strength. "Today, traitors sought to tear us apart," she said. "But instead, they have shown us the truth. Our strength is not in bloodlines or borders. It is in unity. Let this day mark the start of a new bond between our people. Not of fear, but of trust. Not of war, but of peace." The words echoed through the chamber. Heads bowed in respect. For the first time, hope stirred where doubt once ruled. Ryan watched her, his chest tight with pride. He had guarded many leaders before, but none who spoke with such weight. And though she had once been wrapped in sorrow, he now saw in her eyes the first signs of healing. After the council was dismissed, Lyra walked with Ryan through the quiet corridors of the station. Outside the windows, stars stretched across the endless dark. She paused, her gaze lingering on the light of distant worlds. "When Torin left me with betrayal," she said softly, "I thought I would never trust again. Every face reminded me of what I had lost. Then you appeared, carrying his likeness, as if fate wished to test me. At first, I hated it. But now I see the truth. You are not his echo. You are the proof that I was wrong to close my heart to others." Ryan stood silent for a moment, unsure how to answer. Finally, he spoke with quiet honesty. "I am only a guard, my queen. My life was meant for service, not for shaping worlds. Yet if my actions have given you hope, then I am glad." She turned to him, her eyes steady. "You are more than a guard, Ryan. You are a bridge between our people. And perhaps, you are also a bridge between my past and my future." For a long moment, they simply stood together, the stars casting soft light over their faces. There was no need for more words. The bond between them was no longer shaped by shadows of betrayal, but by the truth of loyalty and courage. In the days that followed, the station became a place of rebuilding. The council worked with renewed determination, drafting agreements that balanced both human and Zorith needs. Soldiers trained side by side, and traders moved between worlds without fear. It was not perfection, but it was a beginning. As for Lyra and Ryan, they remained at the heart of it all. She is the queen who chose to lead with strength and hope, and he is the guard whose courage reminded both peoples that peace was possible. The legend of that day spread across worlds. Songs were sung of the human guard who fought with the fire of loyalty, and the queen who chose to see him not as the shadow of her past but as the light of her future. And though battles might still rise in years to come, one truth remained unshaken. Humanity and Zorith had proven that together, they were stronger. And at the center of that truth stood a queen and her guard, bound not by fear, but by trust. A new dawn had begun.